All right, guys, welcome to this podcast by Symor Investments Wealth, sponsored by Symor Investments Wealth. Today, we're going to tackle something that's hot and heavy today. It's called inflation. All right, everybody's feeling it. You feel it at the gas pump. You feel it at the grocery stores. You're feeling it everywhere. I want to talk about what that is. First of all, how did we get here? I want to kind of navigate us through this a little bit. Okay, now. At the very beginning, I want to talk about what is inflation. Everybody knows what that is. It's a $100 bill. Okay. Now let me ask you guys a question. Today, this $100, let's do hypothetical. Let's say today's $100 bill can get you 4 bags of groceries. All right. Now, 5 years from today, the same $100 bill through something called inflation may not get you but 1.5 bags of groceries, right? And it's the same currency. Well, what has happened between now and let's say 5 years down the road? That's something called inflation, okay? And that's what we've been experiencing. We go to the gas pumps and things like that. So let's just kind of talk about how do we get here and how do we kind of manage our way through inflation. Thank you guys for joining, by the way. Well, we had this once in a lifetime occurrence. I ain't gonna say once in a lifetime, well, maybe once in our lifetime. This thing called COVID-19. You guys can take your mind back. We were in a scenario where we didn't know how society was going to function, right? We had this disease that was so contagious that we didn't know if it was safe to even get mail out of the mailbox. All right. I mean, I remember when it first happened, I remember getting a Lysol and spraying my mail, right, before I even opened the mail, because it was that dangerous, and we didn't know what it could do to us. So we lived in a very different society. Now, if it was just contained to one area, that's one thing. One city, one neighborhood, that's one thing. Well, this thing was global, which meant you can't get on an airplane and get away from it, right? So what I'm trying to do now is level set. This thing impacted the entire world and the world's economy. All right, now, I recall being so afraid that, again, you didn't want to leave the house. It was a trying time. But thanks to medicine and some of these great pharmaceutical companies, they were able to navigate us to a point where we can kind of get back to some normal things in life. So that's great on their behalf. It tells you about the ingenuity of the American business out here. I mean, they're doing some great things. All right, well, that is one of the causes for why we are here today, right, in an inflationary period. So I just want to bring us back to how we got here. That was the main reason, because before then, inflation was just, you get an inflation number, CPI number, it was nothing to write home about. It was fairly under control. But that pandemic created an environment where, people couldn't go to work. Unless you're an essential employee. What is an essential employee? Well, the people who make Tylenol. If they're in a factory making Tylenol, or baby formula, you had to go to work, even if it was dangerous conditions. And meat packing plants and people who are creating, the food supply for us. That's critical. They had to go risk their lives to ensure that we could function, albeit in a very separated society. So those people had to go to work. But a good number of people could not get to work, and that caused so many constraints and issues in what they call the supply chain. What is the supply chain? Supply chain is people who are manufacturing different items to make a product, right? Let's take an automobile, for example. Alternators, carburetors, you may have different people creating different things in order for the car to be created as a whole. Let's just take that example. Let's say where the factories are, they're not able to go to work, right? And they're not able to produce what they were once producing. Let's say, for example, only half of the staff or 25% of the people who are in those positions can go to work. So that means now you're not putting 100 parts out, you're only putting 25 parts out, all right? How does that impact us? Well, if I can only do 25 where I was doing 100, now you only have 25 models out there for sale, okay? That's a problem. That's called supply chain. That's impacting our ability to get the proper amount of products out there for consumption. So that's where when you hear the term supply chain, that's what they're meaning, okay? So during this pandemic, that was very limited, right? The parts and the being able to manufacture and create these items. We got to a point where we're not producing, our output was not there. Okay, so you got that going on now. So you got all these workers. Let's take the same example. Let's say we are a car manufacturer. We got different people, producing different parts of their vehicle. So there were 100 employees. Now there are only 25. Now 75 people can't come to work, right? Now those 75 are at home. Oh, staying away from COVID. I'm throwing you guys back to the pandemic, back to where we were. Those people still have bills to pay. Those people still have a livelihood to maintain. So what do? Now introducing the government. The government knew that there was a problem there. They knew they had to come in, fill the gap, fill the voids for some of these incomes. So they scrambled and created bills and different things in Washington and came out with stimulus packages, okay? So these stimulus packages were meant to help make right what was wronged. In that scenario, you had an example where it was just the state of 100 workers, 75 they're not getting the income that they were used to getting. So we created this thing called a stimulus check. Okay, stimulus check. Now those stimulus checks that's money being printed and sent out to individuals. Keep in mind, no work has gone along with that money. We've literally went to the printing presses and started printing money. Okay. Now, with that money being printed and distributed out to those 75 employees, that helped to ease the pain of those particular employees. Now, we're getting our way through this pandemic, and a stimulus package has come. Not only did it go to the employees, it went to the the owners of the businesses, right? Let's call these automobile companies. They got a lump sum because now we're not selling 100 cars, we can only sell 25. Well, the government came in and paid them for, X amount of dollars. Can't say for 75 cars, but some X dollar, right? So you got some new money in the economy with that. You also have new money in the economy with the workers. So this is the government trying to get us through this phase that we're in. All right, so printed more money. Now you got all that money in the system, cash money. All right. Well, let's kind of get through the pandemic a little bit, and you'll see that eventually things got back to normal or got closer to normal. When that happened, now you get all these people back to work, right? And you get the car manufacturers. They had their lump sum. They're putting cars out, and they are starting to sell those vehicles, getting more close to normal again. But you got this economy out here that's saying this to us. They're saying there's money out there to be distributed or to be spent. What are we going to spend it on? Think about all the money that the government created to go into the economy. All of a sudden now, people. Well, let me back this up. Let's go back to the 75 individuals who got the stimulus check and their automobile makers got stimulus money. The people at home who got the stimulus checks, when they're at home, and so they're getting money, let's say they were getting some payments from their jobs, they got the stimulus money coming in. When they were home, they didn't go out and spend additional monies, right? So they were home, they were getting some money in, but the spending stopped with a lot of families because they're not going to eat, they're not doing a whole lot of stuff. Everybody listening to me here understand exactly what I mean when I say this. All of a sudden, they have more money at their disposal. Okay, so we're getting back to normal. They have more money at their disposal now because they were forced to stay home and save money. I hate to use that word save, but we weren't able to spend as much as we were normally spending. So you couple that with the fact that you've been at home and you want to get out and do other things, you have what they call a demand, all right? They call it pent up demand. So now, as we're able to get out there and get more normal in our day-to-day living, we are wanting to go out and purchase different items, okay? Let's start with the same employees at the car manufacturer. So they want to get out there and start living again. Now, let's look at the system though. The producers are slowly catching up because workers slowly got back to work and started putting things out. The consumer, which is all of us, had pent up demand, which meant that we wanted to hurry up and go out. We finally got a chance to get out there and do things. We wanted to hurry up and go out there and start buying different things. Now you got this dynamic where you have the producers who are catching up and the consumers who are way ahead trying to, get caught up with their normal activities. When there's, let's say you got 5 items and 100 people trying to buy 5 items, what's going to happen? The price is going to go up. Those prices are going to go up for, I'm throw this one out here first, greed one. If a business owner see that they can get more for a product or service than they've done in the past, they're going to do that. So you got that part of the equation, greed. They're gonna get more. Number 2, they have this thing called supply chain constraints. All right, so let me talk about that for a second. Go back to this car manufacturer. Let's say that the people, this is literal, on the shipping docks, let's say they manufacture these cars in China or Japan or Taiwan or wherever, and they're starting to catch up. The dock workers are just coming back to work. They've been at home as well, but you got all this stuff coming over all of a sudden, and then you got all this material sitting at the docks waiting to be distributed out to America. You got that going on as well. Okay, so that supply chain constraint means that the products are distributed in there, but they can't get to the stores in time. They can't get to the shelves in time. They can't get to the car lot in time, which is also applying pressure to the goods and services that are out there. Okay, so those 2 things. So let's talk about where we are. We got greed, old-fashioned greed out there, which means that people are going to, they can get if I have an iPhone, if I can get $1,500 for it, I'm going to get $1,500 for it. That's just capitalism. They're going to do that. Okay. Number 2, you're going to have pent up demand, which means more people are buying more things because they got more disposable cash at their hand than they've had in the past. That's number 2. Number 3, the excess money supply, the excess money that's out in the system because the government has given out stimulus checks. They've given stimulus to corporations and businesses, and one of the most important pieces is a 4th thing I'm adding in here. They've lowered interest rates, which means, as part of their making things better and making things right, they say, hey, let's just drop all the interest rates, across the board so we can keep the economy afloat. Well, when they drop the interest rate, now you're paying less cash to the banks and to the Federal Reserve. All that cash stays out in the economy. Okay? So we got four things going on. And I'm going to give interest rates a totally separate category because it created so much additional cash out here. I'm talking about that in a second. So let's take my scenario and keep moving forward with that one. Products and services are not being created. We're not being created to the degree in which it was before the pandemic. Okay, so now you're producing 25 automobiles as opposed to 100. So you got fewer automobiles out there available for you to buy. That's number one. So you got fewer products available. Number two, because people were at home and not able to spend money like they've normally done, they've saved a lot of money and they've had pent up demand, which is they have this need or desire to go out and get back to normal and catch up on things, spend money, so to speak, go out to eat, take a vacation, all these sort of things. Putting pressure on the limited supply out there, right? Which creates greed out there, okay? Which means that the sellers are going to push their prices up based on that. Okay. Also, guys, this thing called the government stimulus. Okay, that's when the government decided, out of sheer panic and not knowing how the pandemic was going to end or what was going to happen, they went out there and put money into the economy. Okay. They put money in the economy by way of stimulus to the corporations and people. And the other big thing they did was they went out there and they lowered the interest rates to zero. Okay, so you bundle all that stuff together, you're going to have an environment where inflation will be at an all-time high. Okay, but what I think people are missing is in this scenario, we had this one-off. We had this thing called COVID-19, okay, which created the inflationary, all by itself, created all this inflationary pressure. This is just a result of a pandemic that has crippled the world. And people had to manage this thing on the fly, okay? And this is, that's kind of a reason as to why we are here today, okay? One of the reasons why we're here today. Now, let me get it, of course, Symor Investments Wealth. I'm all about the stock market and all that kind of stuff. I train on the markets, and I got to talk about that part too. People felt rich. Let me say this too. During 2020, when people are home, and this government stimulus started going out there, well, they started pushing up, people had money, excess money, and people started flooding the markets, right? They started creating this artificial, this somewhat of a bubble in the stock market, and they pushed a lot of asset prices up on these assets on the markets, and they were kind of rushing in doing that, right? It was somewhat of a bubble. And then you couple that with rising asset prices on the stock market with these consumers, people felt even more rich, right? They look at the portfolio and said, whoa, I made so much money on my stock portfolio. And guess what they did? They went out and purchased big ticket items because they felt like they had so much money to spend based on the markets. So all of that is where we are today. That's where we are today. And that kind of got us, got you in a situation where you go to the grocery store and, you could take $150 before COVID, you could walk out with 6 or 7 bags of groceries. Now you got 4 in a little small bag. That's all based on these pressures caused by pricing. Okay. Now we're going to talk about all of these things, and I can break them down even further. But I want to just keep it high level, guys, and kind of bring it home to a lot of people. All right, inflation. Again, start off with that $100 bill, and the purchasing power of that is dwindling. Let me say this to some people. Some people may have taken the approach that, hey man, I'm just going to save my money. I'll tell you what inflation does to you when you save your money. You put $100 in the bank today. If inflation hits it, you pull that same $100 out in 3, 4, 5 years. Let's say, for example, we stayed on the same path, same course. Well, you can only spend, you may only get $50 worth of stuff with the $100 bill. So that means you've lost 50% of the value of the dollar. Why am I talking about this right now? I'm talking about that to say that we're all in this thing together. Okay, so there's no way out of the inflationary pressure out here in the economy. So whether you're saving money or you're, whatever the case may be, you're going to be impacted by inflation. Okay, all right. Let me go back to one thing I want to talk about is what I think happened with these interest rates. And notice I gave the interest rates its own category. Okay, I say if I go back to my categories, I said pent up demand, greed, stimulus money, and I said interest rates. Okay, now when the government went down to 0% on those interest rates, a lot of people got in the mail, hey, let's refi your house, refinance it. If you're stuck at 5%, you can go down to 2%. Okay, on your mortgage. Think about that, right? So you can probably cut your mortgage payment down for $500, $600 per month. And you have to do anything but fill out paperwork and go do that. That's a great move if you did that. Also, because the inflationary periods were so, it is, right now still is a big deal, it inflated the price of housing. Okay, so now they're coming back telling you that you have $100,000 in equity in your home, $200,000, $300,000, $40,000 or over in your home. That's newfound wealth. You may say, well, Ray, in 2019, it was worth $200,000. Today it's worth $450,000. They say, yeah, Ray, you have $250,000 in equity in your home. Well, I'll go ahead and cash that out. Multiply that times, some millions of people. Then you tell me what kind of excess money is out here. Remember, we haven't done anything to work for that money. That's just, when they say your house has appreciated, that's an arbitrary decision that somebody has made. It was worth $250,000 in 2019. Today it's worth $450,000. $200,000 magically appeared in your bank account. And you got a lower interest rate. Okay? So if you think about that, you come to realize really quick, there's a lot of money out here in the economy. Now, that person pulls out $200,000. I'm going to Greece. I'm going to buy, a new car. I'm going to buy me a speedboat. All this stuff. All these things out here with newfound money. Multiply that again by millions of people. Remember, greed's out there. So, they only have so many things on the shelf, especially coming after the COVID situation. Supply chain is just catching up again. You're going to push the price of those items and products up. So that's kind of what happened and what has happened. So if you think about it in those terms, hopefully I was kind of clear on that. That's why we have such a high degree of inflation out here. All right. So I spent about 24 minutes on that. On how did we get here? Why did we get here? That's it. You multiply that scenario I talked about with the workers, with the refis on these homes. Then you're going to see why the excess money out here, based on stimulus that the government gave out, at the very beginning, you got all that excess cash out there. And all that cash and limited supply, you're going to put pressure on those prices. And that's where we are today. Well, some people will say, well, okay, Ray, I totally understand that. And I feel you. How does that impact me? Well, let's talk about how does it impact Americans, right? Groceries, electricity, phone, everything. It's going to go up. And unfortunately, certain segments of the population is going to feel that pain more so than the other. We know Black Americans are going to, in general, don't have as much in savings. They're going to be impacted more. Minorities are going to be impacted more. So that's unfortunate. In the system, there's no segregation of person, right? So if this thing happens to the economy, well, everybody in the economy is going to expect it. Is going to get burned by it. A gallon of milk is a gallon. The price of a gallon of milk is the price of a gallon of milk, regardless of who's buying it. Okay, it doesn't say, well, what's your economic conditions, and it's going to be a different price for you. It's not going to be that. So that's why the Federal Reserve has to go in there and do what they can to fix these prices. And the government, the other administrations, the presidential administration has to go in and try and do things to fix this inflation. The first couple of things that they can do, and what they have done, let's say the Federal Reserve, they've gone out, and you've been hearing it, they've raised interest rates. Well, they're going to stop those refis from happening so frequently, okay? And so all the people who, pulling those refis, they say, well, it's not worth me doing that. So they're going to stop that flow of money getting into the economy, because the interest rates are going to be what they're going to be. They're going to raise them. So that's one quick fix that they can have out there. Also, when they raise those interest rates, think about this. When you borrow $100,000, let's say in the past you had to, it was, at the height of the pandemic, it was basically 2%, to borrow $100,000. Now it's gone up to about close to 6%. So that extra 4% of money that's in the economy has been pulled out, gone back into the banking system. Okay, so that's going to make people refi less and have people borrow less. Okay, which means if I can only borrow so much, it's going to eventually bring the price of these houses down, in theory. Okay, because where I could qualify for $800,000 before, now I can only qualify for $6. If I can qualify for $3, I can only qualify for $175. So that's going to bring the pricing down on these houses. Also, by raising the interest rate, you're going to pull the money supply out a little bit, and hopefully, in theory, bring down the prices of these consumer goods, make people less active out there buying, all these different things, or what have you. Also, stock markets. Well, it's going to impact the stock market. The market doesn't like, high interest rate environments. We don't like that. So it's going to bring these prices down on some of these on the market as a whole, and that's what it has done. So that's kind of how we got here, where we are, and what the government is doing to bring us back. And I did mention the presidential side of this thing. They can go out and just talk policy. One other thing that they can do for the oil price, the gas prices, which impacts every American, regardless of where you are. They can release what they call the oil reserves to actually flood the markets with oil to try and bring some of those prices down as well. You got more oil out there. It's more, it's cheaper for those companies to go ahead and convert that to gas. So it's going to eventually, bring the price of oil down, because you got so much out there. These companies that are creating gas will pay less for the oil, and hopefully they pass the prices down to the consumer. They hadn't done it as fast as they could, and you notice the president did say he went out there and specifically called them out to say, "Hey, bring those prices down," because we know the supply is there for the oil. So they're able to do that. So it's that's kind of where we are with respect to inflation. So it's a dangerous game to play, because if it gets totally out of control, the value of that, gets less and less. Okay? But the elephant in the room, guys, on all of this is those employers, right? Y'all did notice, they as the economy began to overheat, companies started hiring and started looking for employees, and you couldn't find an employee unless you paid. An employee is not going to leave because they know what it costs to make it out here to survive. So they have to raise wages, right, to get these employees out here. And when they raise those wages, that's going to impact their profits, which their stock price at some point, the shareholders. So that's a something that the Federal Reserve did not want to do. They call that wage pressure. They don't want to have to pay these employees all this money. Not because they're being mean, but because they know they cannot sustain pricing continually going up higher and higher. Okay. Now, a lot of employees are standing on the same pay grade that they were at the very beginning. 2019. And they've seen the value of their paycheck dwindle on a regular basis. So that's another problem that the Federal Reserve and the government understands, that you can't have pricing totally out of control because the employment, the pay or the wages can't keep up with that. And if you try and keep up with that, you're going to run these big companies out of business because they can't afford to pay the employees at a rate to keep up with inflation, right? We all know they can give them more money, but if they got into a game where they have to keep raising the salaries of all their employees just to keep up with inflation, it'll never stop, because the more you raise their salaries, the more demand those employees are going to have out in the economy, which is going to continuously push the prices up. So that's the danger, and continuously raising wages to match inflation. So they can't do that. So that's kind of why, the Federal Reserve trying to control inflation is a number one priority. And again, why did we get here? All because of COVID-19. It was a man-made problem after we got into COVID, because I think the government went too far on the stimulus side trying to fix it, right? Because, we are already they always talk about a deficit that we're in. Well, we went further into the deficit trying to fix this, trying to fix the stimulus, trying to stimulate the economy with all this money that they put out there in the economy. So that was something that they did, and I think they may end up learning from it. I ain't gonna say they're gonna regret it, but they're gonna learn from it as we go. Why did it not get as bad as it could have gotten? To me, because I do have a technology background, tech helps save the day with a lot of this pandemic and this inflation and all of these things. Because of tech, when people couldn't go out and actually physically be close together to work, they were able to create, get into with Zoom and Microsoft and all these other software platforms and continue their work, right? They can continue going into those offices and producing work in a silo, right? As opposed to going into an office, everybody's working from home and keeping productivity high. And I think that was a game changer in this particular pandemic. And I think without that, I think we would have been in much worse shape. Okay, because everything would have stopped, including a lot of these paychecks, and they would have needed to do much more from a government stimulus perspective if it wasn't for technology. So I think technology saved the day with respect to this pandemic and with respect to us getting our way out of this pandemic. So I don't want anybody to lose sight of that. Technology was critical in keeping the lights on, so to speak, for a lot of people. Literally and figuratively, they kept the lights on with technology. So I think that was a really good, it forced us to go to where I think the economy was going anyway. It just made us go there faster, right? I just think it was a great thing having this technology available for us. So we're grateful for that. So where do we go from here? Well, I think we crawl our way out of this, because I think in order to stop demand, and they say they don't want a recession, but they got to have a recession. The government has to slow the spending down. They have to slow demand down. Unfortunately, people are going to have demand as long as they think they got money, right? to be honest with you guys, a healthy economy does have an unemployment rate. They don't want the economy 100% employed. Right? And I can say that, I don't care what you read or what somebody tells you. They see this as a problem, right? They don't want everybody to make, X amount of dollars. A healthy capitalist society has to have the classes, the lower class, the middle class, and the upper middle class, and the high, and the ultra rich. It's been designed that way from the very beginning, and the system is comfortable with it working that way. I'm not saying it's right. The system is just comfortable with it working that way because it's always worked that way. If you change it and put more people in the upper echelon of the economy, in their minds, just say, hey, that's new, that's different. We can't keep up with demand. We don't have enough supply out here to accommodate everybody being able to go to Greece every summer. There's not enough planes out there. So, of course, I'm just throwing examples out here. Try to get into what I'm trying to say. Right? There's a reason why there are classes in the economy, right? Service class, so on and so forth. I'm not being mean when I say that. It's just the way it works. That's the way the system works. So I'm not giving any personal advice on what part of the system you should be in. There's no right or wrong answer there. That's just the way the system has been designed here from the very beginning. But moving forward, so they're going to raise interest rates, and they're going to watch the CPI numbers, which is a consumer price index. They're going to see how much it's costing you for these goods and services. If the cost will continuously go up, they're going to do more drastic things to break the demand, to keep people from wanting to spend, all this money out here on this, that, or the other. Remember, during the quarantine, during COVID, people had more money in the banks, okay, than they've had in a long time. Americans saved money. It didn't take but a year or two. People had all kinds of money saved up. They weren't going out to eat. We're doing all those other things. And remarkably, people are like, wow, we got so much money, saved now. So all that money being saved was a good thing for Americans, but also coming out on this other side here, people are saying, well, now they're spending a whole lot of money and it's creating all this demand out there, which is putting pressures on the supplies and giving us this inflationary situation here. So they want to curve demand, so to speak. So only way I think to curve demand is they got to slow the whole thing down, slow the train down. And that's why you see it's going to cost you more money to borrow money. And that's going to be, when I say borrow money, when you get a loan for a home or automobile or credit cards, all that's going to cost you more money. So that's not a great thing for us. So we have to be very careful. Now, what do I want you to do? People who are listening to this podcast, all right? What do I want you to do? Well, one thing I can say, and we're going to just kind of watch this thing play out, but I just got in my mind some things that I want to harp on a little bit to help you through this inflationary period. Number one, credit cards. Can't live off of 15, 19% interest credit cards. So those credit cards can continuously go up as the Feds are raising their interest rates. So you want your credit card balances paid as close to zero as possible, or while the getting is still good, you transfer those things to zero APRs, the balance transfers. If you can take advantage of that, by all means, do it now. Don't wait. Number two, big ticket items. If you can wait on a car or home, I would say wait. Give the Fed time and space to do what they're going to do, to see what they're going to do to this economy first. All right, you go out there and purchase that home and it's sitting at $800,000, or getting your dream home at $600,000, and then they trip the economy up, it's worth $4. That's not going to be a nice picture. So just kind of give it an eye. Just wait just a little bit to see what how the Fed's going to do this economy. They call it a soft landing. Let's see if they can slow this thing down without causing recession, without having to inflict more pain via interest rates. So that's number two. If you can avoid a big ticket item, hold off on it. Number one, pay a high interest credit card off, or balance transfer it. Hold off on big ticket items. Number two. Number three, I always say, live on a budget. go through this period, getting necessary things that are not necessary. Hold off on it. For me, I train in the stock market and how to invest and all that kind of stuff. I talk about budgeting. The very first 25% of my class is spent strictly on budgeting, because I know one thing: if you can't budget properly, everything else is just just kind of throwing things on the wall to see what sticks, right? You're just kind of doing things. If you got a budget and you're in a mindset of discipline about your money, you're going to be much better off. If you don't have a budget, number 3, I'm going to say live on a budget. Live on a budget. So I give you 3 things so far. All right. Live on a budget. And number 4, income. Hey, get the income up. All right. So you got to catch up some kind of way. I think, the job market out there is such that when people change jobs, all of a sudden they're worth a whole lot of money. If you stay on the same job, you're under an old pay system, and that old pay system is not keeping up with the cost of inflation. So if you are in a situation where you can switch out. That doesn't hurt anything. Okay, a fresh start is always good for everybody. So those are 4 things that I think would help that's out there that can help you with inflation. So that's kind of where we are, and I think we'll be here until maybe January. Until they figure this thing out, because I think with the advent with this technology being as advanced as it is, I think what everybody's missing is the role that technology is playing in helping us get through this inflationary period. I think technology is going to be a great tool. Remember, you heard it here first. Nobody's saying it anywhere. I'm saying that they are missing out on the fact that technology is such that this is not the same inflation that they were fighting in the late 70s, right? When inflation was sky high, interest rates were high, inflation was high. That was under the Jimmy Carter administration. This is not that game, because technology has got us in a much different space here. And we have a more global economy now than we did before. So right now you got global reach on these goods and services, and product availability. As soon as the supply chain constraints go away, maybe supply would keep up with demand in a different magnitude than it has done in the past, okay, because of the open borders that we have today. So again, I don't think this is the same scenario that we had in the 70s, although the Federal Reserve is fighting it like they were fighting it in the 70s. They haven't changed anything. So that's what I want to say on that one. I believe that we're going to get on the other side of this thing faster than what I think they are anticipating. So with that being said, guys, hopefully you've learned something about inflation and why we got here and what it is. I think inflation is something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. It can impact us all in a negative way. And remember, you can't hide, guys. So if I say, hey man, just keep all my money in the bank. You put your money in the bank, like I said, if inflation stays around, when you pull your money out, it's worth less and less and less. So you have to do something else. You can't just say, I'm just gonna put my money in the bank and run away, or just save everything I have. No, there are some things you wanna do out here to help you get around being impacted by inflation. So that's very key. Think through that. All right, guys, I'm just going to recap real quick on this thing. Why did we get here? COVID-19, the pandemic, caused inflation. Before the pandemic, we didn't have an inflation problem. I'm just keeping it simple. The pandemic caused this. What exacerbated it? The stimulus, which is part of the pandemic. So if I go into the solution in the pandemic, it was the stimulus program. The stimulus program put money in individuals' pockets, in corporations' pockets, and third, interest rates. It dropped the interest rates to a point where everybody could refinance their homes. Everybody could refinance and start pulling money out of homes. It started inflating the prices of homes up quite a bit. People all of a sudden had all this equity. They took all that extra money. So we got extra money from stimulus to the consumer, stimulus to corporations, and then we got this 0% interest rate environment where people were refi, pulling all that money out of those homes. All those are manufactured dollar bills, right? Not from work or labor, from, arbitrary decisions. When they say, oh, your house is now worth $200,000 more than it was a year ago. Or when the government wrote a check and the government gave those companies money. So we got all that excess money out there floating around. When I say floating around, let's say I got that money, I hire a painter. Then I'm hiring a floor guy. Then I'm going on vacation. Then I'm going buying, a vehicle. I got all that new money now, but I'm taking that new money and putting it on real items out there. And those real items were limited. So now all those prices have gone up, right? Because there's so many people trying to get it based off of greed, based off supply chain that we've talked about. So that's where we are. Now the government trying to fix it. They are raising interest rates to draw some of that money back out of the economy. And they are, the government is also asking for gasoline, asking them to drop the prices because the supply is there and they're trying to take the greed out of the market. So those are the things that they're trying to do to fix it. And I think we are in a wait and see game. I gave you guys 4 things I want you to do to help you get through this, and we'll just see where it goes. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. Hopefully you enjoyed this thing about inflation and return back, guys, to the podcast when we talk about all things financials, whether it's credit, budgeting and all those sorts of things. And of course, this is sponsored by SymorinvestmentsWealth.com, where we, train you on how to be successful in the stock market, train you on how to invest for the long term and build wealth out here, guys. So hopefully this is good for you, and I hope to have you soon.